The topic of my talk today is emerging technologies. What does the future hold? So before I start making predictions on my own, I had a few slides for you. I wanted to go through a few quotes. This is okay. So this is Albert Einstein talking about predicting the future of nuclear energy. He says there's not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. This here is the chairman of IBM talking about the market for computers. And this last one is my favorite. This is the CTO, Steve Chen, CTO of and co-founder of YouTube, when asked in 2005 about the growth potential of YouTube. So his comment was, there are just not that many videos that I want to watch. There is just not enough content in the world. And that was his main issue with the growth of YouTube back then. He was not the only one at that time who thought in this way. So a little before 2005, the idea, the concept of internet was pitched to one of the TV networks, and it was pitched as internet is a TV station, is a channel. Internet is a combination of 5,000 TV channels. So that's how internet was positioned to a TV network. And those guys laughed at this. They laughed at the idea. They said, content is very, very expensive to produce. And there is no company that is rich enough, there is no industry that is large enough to take on such an enterprise where we could be looking at 5,000 channels. The reality, of course, is very different now. Today, we don't have 5,000 channels. We don't have anywhere close to 5,000 channels. We are talking about millions of channels. We are talking about 100 million channels. And really, no one was able to predict this. No one in the world thought that we would have 5,000 channels, let alone 100 million channels. And the reason for this was because everyone was thinking this content is going to be produced by some enterprise. No one realized that this content is going to be produced by millions of people around the world. That there would be people like you and me who would have phones in our hands, and we would be creating this kind of content. And we would end up with 100 million channels. So there is very little understanding that we had of how internet would shape up back then. And I think there is very little understanding of what internet is really even now, even today. So I want to give you two facts. I'm very sure if the first one doesn't blow your mind, the second one will definitely will. The first fact that I want to talk about is that there are 10,000 pages on the web for every person that is alive in this world. So we are talking about 70 trillion pages of content on the web today. And the more interesting thing is that all of these pages have been created in the last 9,000 days. So we've been creating content at the rate of 80 billion pages of web content every day. That is what internet is today. It helps us connect with people. It helps us book cars, hire cars. It helps us check TV scores. It helps us check weather. It helps us hire people. It helps us buy houses. It helps us do a lot of things that no one ever visualized internet would be able to do. The reason why I'm talking about this is that before I start making any predictions about the future, I wanted to put this as a caveat. We are really bad at predicting future. Our past experience shows that we are really bad at it. The reason we still make predictions is because however imperfect these predictions may be, there is still some path that they can show us. There is some information that they can give us about how the future will shape up. And if we are smart enough, if we are wise enough, we may be able to prepare for it at some level. So with this caveat in mind, I want to go to the topic that I have today. I want to start with my first prediction. So I was at a friend's house a few days back, and she had gone for a trek recently. She had just come back from a trek. And she had a bunch of photographs that she had taken, and I was looking at those photographs. So I was sitting and I was looking at all these photographs, and her 2-year-old son, he came and sat with me. So he was sitting next to me, and I'm holding the photographs, and then I see that he kind of does this on the photo. I didn't pay attention to it the first time, but then he did it again a second time, and I realized that he's trying to right swipe the photo. This is a real photo. This is not a phone that I'm on. But for this kid who's grown up in the age of screens and laptops and phones and all of that, tablets, for him, any object that is not interactive is broken. He's looking at me. He's got this confused look. He's like, why is this not changing? For him, any object that doesn't interact with us, there is something wrong with it. And this is the fact of today. We've worked very hard to introduce interactivity into every object that is there around us. We have tried to add senses to the objects around us. Most objects that we interact with now, they have vision. Vision is very easy to add nowadays. It's very cheap to add. You add a camera and your object has vision. You can add hearing as well. That's also fairly easy to do. But now we are trying to go in for superhuman senses. We are trying to go for heat sensing. We are trying to go for pressure sensing. We are trying to go for X-ray vision. So the objects around us have more senses than we actually have. And this essentially is where we are moving towards, where we are trying to add interactivity into our life. We are trying to become more intimate with the objects around us. Already, most of us are spending more time with our phone than we do with our wives and our kids, or our husbands and our kids. And this is the path that we've decided to take: be more interactive with the objects around us. And in this technologically created world, we are finding different ways to interact with each other within the technology. And that essentially is virtual reality. And we are trying to find different ways, new ways to interact with other objects in this technologically created world, and that is augmented reality. And AR and VR are definitely becoming, the next step that will revolutionize the world. PCs were the first technological innovation that caused a lot of disruption. They caused a wave of disruption within a human lifetime. And they were the first ones to do that. All technologies that came before that, they took a lot of time to gather steam and become this popular. But PCs came, and within one human's lifetime, they changed the world. They disrupted a lot of things. Mobile phones were the second ones. And now AR, VR is going to be the third one. So AR, VR, in my mind, is a technology that is going to have a deep, deep impact on our world. It is expected to grow at over 60% annually over the next 5 years. It's expected to reach close to $1 trillion in market size over the next 3 to 5 years. And it is definitely going to change the way we interact with objects around us, the way we interact with technology, and the way objects around us interact with us. So this is one of my predictions. I think AR, VR is going to have a major impact on our life. It's going to disrupt our life the same way mobiles and PCs have done before. Media, gaming, healthcare, defense, manufacturing, retail, education, these are industries where we are already seeing a lot of impact from AR, VR, and I expect a lot of growth in the field to be driven by these industries. Implicit in the world of virtual reality is the fact that everything you do, every action that you take, without exception, is going to be tracked. When you put on a VR headset, when you get into virtual reality, whatever you do, every gesture that you make, maybe even thoughts that you have, are going to be recorded. And that is not very different from where we are already. I mean, if I look at what tech companies know about me right now, they know what I look like. They know where I live. They know where I work. They know what I earn. They know how much I spend, who I talk to, what I say, what I read, what I buy, what I even want to buy. All of this is already getting tracked. But I'm very sure 10 years from now, we will look back at today's times and say, oh, those were the good old days when we still had some privacy. 10 years from now, every thought is also going to be recorded. And this means that the data that we have is, the richness of the data that we have is increasing tremendously. And the more richer the data gets, the more important it is to keep it safe and secure. Leon, one of the cybersecurity experts from Israel who had come yesterday, talked about his organization HackerU and the challenges that they've faced in keeping this data secure. And these are some very real challenges. The data that we are dealing with now is not just personal data. There is business data. There is government data. It's a treasure trove of information, and keeping it safe and secure is not just a person's imperative. It's a business's imperative. It's the government's imperative. There are governments all over the world that are spending tons of money on keeping this data safe and secure. There are businesses that are spending tons of money. JP Morgan spent about $600 million in 2018 just on cybersecurity. They have a team of 3,000 IT security personnel who work on cybersecurity. And most banks that we talk about, global banks, have similar budgets. They have similar teams. So cybersecurity is another domain that is set to grow tremendously in the coming years. It has been growing at, it has grown by about 30 times in the last 13 years. And it's also expected to grow at 35% year on year over the next few years to reach $1 trillion in size. So cybersecurity is definitely the next emerging technology, which is going to create a lot of jobs, create a lot of opportunities for us. When we imagine hacking, when we imagine a hacker, we usually think of a nerdy, geeky guy sitting in a dark room on a computer trying to hack into the CIA network or the NSA network. And the way he's trying to do it is, he's trying to break into their computers using either by stealing someone's password or by trying to break someone's password and essentially break into their computers. This is how we've seen hacking. This is how hacking has been for a long time. But now that is not the case. Hackers don't necessarily need to break into computers if they have to hack. There was a Las Vegas casino where hackers were trying to break into some time ago, and the casino had a very secure network. They had a bunch of cybersecurity experts who were working with them, and so the hackers were finding it very difficult to break into the network. So instead of breaking into the computers, they found a very novel way of getting into the network, which is by using the casino's aquarium. So the casino had an aquarium, and the aquarium had an IoT sensor, a temperature sensor. And like all IoT sensors, this one was also connected to the network. And the hackers found this as a much easier entry point to get into the casino's network, and they were able to do whatever they wanted to through this. So this is an example of the need for one technology being dependent on the growth in another technology. In this case, the growth in IoT, the IoT devices, IoT sensors is further fueling the growth for cybersecurity, because all of these IoT sensors are connected to the network, and therefore they are all prone to hacks. So IoT is another domain that is going to be in a lot of demand. It's already made a big impact on our lives. Many of you would be familiar with the Black Mirror episode, which had this guy who, everyone in that episode was wearing contact lenses, and those contact lenses were storing your memories, and those memories could later be accessed and viewed as and when you wanted. And that seemed very far-fetched a couple of years ago when I saw that episode. But now I'm reading that that is already a reality, or that is close to a reality. There are IoT connected lenses that are storing not our memories, but a lot of our health information. and then they are sending it to the relevant companies or relevant people. But this is we are getting very close to that reality when again every object that we interact with, not only will it be interactive, but it will also be connected to the network so that there is continuous stream of data that is being created and that is being stored that can be accessed by people as and when they desire. IoT is automating our homes. It's making them smarter. IoT is automating our cars. It's making them smarter. IoT is making our refrigerators smarter. It's making our home devices. It's making machines smarter. It's making everything around us a lot smarter by putting sensors in it and using the data coming out of those sensors to make better decisions. Um, So essentially, IoT is helping us make machines smarter. And that itself is a huge, huge opportunity. The IoT market is also close to $1 trillion. This is this is the third emerging technology that I'm talking about that is going to hit $1 trillion in size very soon and is going to have a massive impact along with AR, VR, and cybersecurity. It's going to have a massive impact on our lives. What IoT, to me, essentially, what IoT is doing is IoT is helping is helping machines become smarter. And machines that are smart and that can do the kind of work that we want them to do, there is a word for these machines, which is, of course, robots. So IoT is helping us convert a lot of our regular day-to-day machines into robots so they can perform more efficiently and they can do the kind of tasks that we want to do. And what this means is that there is an entire domain that has come up, which is RPA, which is just dedicated to reducing human intervention, reducing human work through robots and through AI-powered software. RPA is, again, another thing that, another technology, another field that is going to have a massive impact on our lives. We are already seeing glimpses of that. Foxconn, which is a vendor of Apple, which manufactures Apple iPhones, a couple of years ago, they replaced 60,000 workers in their factory with 40,000 robots. And there was a big controversy at that time. People were talking about how we will lose jobs. And this was the perfect example of all the fears of AI that people have been talking about. 60,000 people lost their jobs in one shot. And this is what RPA is doing. So RPA may not be as large as some of the other technologies that I'm talking about, but it's growing at a rapid pace. And even at a smaller size, it is going to have a massive, massive impact on our lives in the coming days. These are some of the bigger technologies that have been impacting us, but there are a lot of other technologies. There is stem cell therapy. There is gene therapy, which is all doing wonders for humans. There is 3D printing. There is nanotechnology. There is 5G technology. There is drones. All of these are technologies that are going to have a massive impact on us. And what is happening now, which is different from earlier, is that all of these technologies are coming at us at a very rapid pace. The pace of change has accelerated. The pace of change has increased tremendously in the last few years. I would say in the last 2 decades, where all of these life-disrupting technologies are coming at us one after the other. And of course, many of us are feeling overwhelmed by this flood of technological dynamism, where every day we are reading about a new technology and how it's going to impact us. And I think many of us in this room also would be feeling overwhelmed by all the new technologies that are coming in. One thing that you can take as consolation is that you're not the only one. I think all of us are having trouble coping with this. All of us are are thinking that will these new technologies make me obsolete? Will they leave me jobless? Will they leave me feeling miserable at the end of the day? And this is a very genuine concern. Will I become obsolete? Will I even have a role to play 10 years from now, 20 years from now in the future? And past experience tells us definitely, we are not going to become obsolete. We are not going to become miserable. This is not the first time that such a technological disruption has happened in our lives. If we go back 100 years, 100 years ago, a majority of the world, more than half the world, was working on farms. Today, that number is less than 2%. So in a very short span of 100 years, we've moved from more than half the world being in agriculture to less than 2% of us being in that field. So we have obviously gone through this kind of a phenomenon before, and we have emerged with not unscathed, but with very few scratches, I would say. And this is because every time a new technology comes in, while it does eliminate certain jobs, it makes certain skills obsolete or irrelevant, it also opens up doors for us to do new things. Each of these technologies that I'm talking about, while they may have some impact on our jobs, they may have some impact on the relevance of the skills that we have, they're also creating tremendous opportunities. They are creating huge number of jobs, and it is really up to us. Do we want to run away from these technologies? Do we want to continue to be intimidated by these technologies, or do we want to embrace them? If we want to embrace them, then we have to start learning about these technologies. We have to start familiarizing ourselves with these technologies. And I think if we can master these technologies, if we can learn these skills, they can actually help us become a lot better at our work. They can help us become a lot more efficient, a lot more powerful in terms of what we can do. And I honestly think, if we use these technologies effectively, they are kind of like the Iron Man suit. They are going to make us much better equipped and much more impactful in whatever we do. So my my suggestion today to all of you here, is please start looking at all of these technologies. These technologies are here to stay. They are not going away. These are not fads. These are very real technologies that are making a deep, deep impact on our lives. And if we want to continue to stay relevant at our workplaces, then we have to embrace these technologies. We have to pick up these skills, and we have to become the Iron Man using these technologies. Thank you. Any questions? Any thoughts?
Gaurav, this is Anis. So just a question from the perspective of our kids. So like my son is 13-year-old, daughter is 8-year-old. And the education system we have today is definitely not equipping them for the economy of tomorrow. And also we are hearing that the job security or the regular jobs that we have today, that might move to gig economy. So how do we prepare our kids when the education system itself is not taking care of it? So someone who's going to come to job market in, let's say, 7, 8, 10 years, how do they prepare for something like this?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And as a father of 2 daughters, I am also faced with this question all the time. We've always known that there is a gap between academia and industry, in the sense that academia has always lagged behind the industry in terms of the skills that are required and what they are imparting in the curriculum. But what has happened in the last 10 to 15 years is that gap has increased tremendously. As I said, the pace of change in technology has accelerated, but our academia has not kept up with it. So the gap between the academia and the industry has widened over the last few years. And if technology keeps changing at this pace, how do we equip our children for the future? And honestly, I don't have a good answer for you. What I do think is that more than imparting a certain skill to them and saying, okay, you need to learn this particular technology, or you need to focus on this. I think if we can equip our children to deal with change, that is the best skill that we can give them. If we can, I don't know, start, the reason why I started with those examples at the start is because we are very, very bad at making predictions. Past data shows that whenever we've tried to predict how a new technology will evolve, we've not done a good job of that. So there is no point in you sitting and trying to predict what will happen in the next 15 years, and therefore how you equip your child with the required skills. But I think the best thing you can do is to equip them for change. And if you can teach them how to deal with change, how to be flexible, how to adapt themselves to different circumstances, I think they will do very well in this world.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Okay.
So I think India traditionally has lagged behind in creating product companies like Google's and others. In this new world, do you see a new ray of hope that if data is going to drive some of the development of these technologies, is there that possibility that India will, and how will? Do you have any examples?
So, see, one of the things that has also happened in the last few years is that there is information is a lot more freely available now. And I'm talking about information on the latest and the most cutting edge. The way information travels, the speed is a lot faster now. So if there is something cutting edge happening in one corner of the world, it spreads very quickly to the rest of the world. We are a lot more connected now than we were ever before, which means that we are not hearing about technologies like cybersecurity and blockchain and AR, VR 10 years or 20 years after they've become mainstream. We are hearing about these technologies as they've started emerging. So there is not much that we have to catch up on. Now is the time when if we get onto these technologies, we can be the world leaders in them. When I talk about cybersecurity, there is a very prestigious certification, the OSCP certification, that is there in cybersecurity, and this is recognized worldwide as one of the best certifications in the field. And I was talking to some of the OSCP guys, and they said that the highest number of people that they get for their certification are from India. And I was very surprised because when we were planning to bring cybersecurity programs to India, we did some research and we found there was no training program that was preparing you for OSCP certification. So I asked these guys, there is no training program that is equipping guys for this, but you're telling me that the highest number of people are coming from India. And he said, yes, these are guys who are in the industry, who understand the importance of picking up these new skills. They are using the internet, they're using the knowledge that is freely available and using that to crack this really, really hard certification. So I think we are already making that impact. I mean, if I look at the field of data, we are probably number 2 after the US in terms of how advanced we are, the kind of skills that we have available and all of that. So we are already recognized as one of the leaders in the world in the data space. And I think with some of these new technologies, if we continue to embrace them at the pace that we are, we will one day be doing work that we would be creating products like Google and Amazon in these new technologies. Thanks, guys. Thank you.